Last year, at the London Film Festival, I saw the film Allensworth. I knew basically nothing about the film going in, or its director James Benning. Full disclosure, I was in the heights of festival fever at the time, and I saw an enticing 65-minute runtime as a great chance to squeeze in a fourth film of the day. I could try and describe the film to you, but it's going to be a lot easier to show you. So this is Allensworth. 12 shots, each 5 minutes in length, each representing a month of the year. 12 shots. 12. You'd be forgiven for thinking that these shots were still images, but I assure you, they are moving. Leaving the screening, I had no idea what to make of the film. On the one hand, I was pretty blown away by the audacity of its structure, but on the other hand...
This is boring.
Thankfully, my tutor, Helen DeWitt, was sat just a few seats down from me, and on hand to help articulate the conflicting feelings I was having.
Yes, I guess I can understand why people would feel a bit conflicted about this film, particularly if they hadn't seen a James Benning film before. What you've got is this tension, so at the same time you're thinking, this is getting a bit dull, but you're also questioning yourself, why is this image important? What is going on here? And of course, with Allensworth, it's about the first African-American founded town in California. So to reflect upon that is an important process of this film.
To reflect is exactly right. At the time, I chalked it off as an interesting viewing experience and moved on to whatever else I was seeing that day. But it's swiftly coming up on a year since I first saw Allensworth, and I still think about it. A lot. Which is why I wanted to make this, a video essay, to see if I can finally figure out Now, perhaps unsurprisingly, there were a lot of walkouts during the screening, but what intrigued me most about this was that people left at a wide variety of different times. The first few trickled out in March, others left around the May or June area. One particularly sadistic individual made it all the way to November, before finally tapping out. In my confusion around this subjective experiencing of the passing of time, it was comforting to learn that Benning is still trying to figure that out too.
I do want to confront people with time, but I don't know what that actually means. Time is extremely hard to nail down because we're always here in the same moment, so I don't know if time even exists. The way you perceive a duration is different too, depending on pleasure or depending on how busy you are. Why does a day pass so quickly sometimes, and why is it so slow another time? I don't have the answer.
But you're trying to figure out by doing...
Well, I'm trying to create situations where people think of that notion, but I don't have the answer to it. It's more of a question.
I think this idea of perceived duration, which Benning describes, is a key reason why slow cinema can be so difficult to recommend.
Y además quería saber qué te había parecido. ¿Te gustó?
Sí, es interesante. Un poco larga, pero me gustó, me gustó.
Es buena. Ya vas a ver que con el paso de los días te va a ir gustando cada vez más.
Asking someone to go and watch some slow cinema is a lot like being that friend who wants you to run a marathon with them, and nobody likes that friend. I mean, I was bored throughout much of Allensworth, and boredom, like all manner of more physical pains, is a spectrum, with each individual having their own threshold for how much of it they can take.
Yep, you're 7.
I used to think that emphasizing the challenge of films like Allensworth was the best way to make them appealing.
I accept.
Framing slow cinema as cinematic endurance tests. And suggesting that finishing them was an achievement to be worn like a badge of honour. But as my own interest and appetite for slow cinema continues to grow, thinking about these films in this way does a disservice to the fact that I really like this, and I'm not entirely sure why, but maybe it's time to try a different approach. I'm certainly not alone in finding slow cinema difficult to recommend. The Berlinale found this out when they were tasked with making a trailer for Allensworth. You guys remember January, right? One of the main functions of a movie trailer, beyond trying to persuade people to go and see it, is to capture the essence of what a film is like. A comedy will lead with its jokes.
It's Dom, right? I'm Yaz.
Nice to meet you.
A horror will push the scares. But while this Berlinale trailer for Allensworth does a good job of capturing what watching the film is like, if you were a slow cinema skeptic, this isn't going to convert you. So what if we were to give James Benning a makeover? Rebrand him as a more populist and accessible filmmaker? And that's where this guy comes in.
Oh my God, you're Michael Bay!
Oh my God, I am Michael Bay.
Michael Benjamin Bay is the director behind many of your least favourite films, but for all of his many and numerous flaws, he is an auteur. His signature brand of Bayhem makes him the perfect fit for this exercise, as he's the polar opposite to the sensibilities of a filmmaker like James Benning. An unstoppable force, an immovable object. So what would a James Benning trailer look like through the eyes of Michael Bay? Let's find out, shall we? The first, and perhaps most obvious challenge that presented itself was that there's nowhere near enough footage in Allensworth. If we take the trailer for Michael Bay's most recent film Ambulance as an example, there are as many shots in the pre-roll for the trailer before we see the Universal Studio logo as there are in the entirety of Allensworth. Altogether, it boasts 194 shots in just under 3 minutes, which is a lot. Fortunately, James Benning is a prolific filmmaker. Over the course of 40 years, between shorts and features, he has 91 films to his name, the vast majority of which are available to watch on YouTube. So, I went looking for more footage. Doing this deep dive into Benning's films highlighted a few key things to me. One was how much the aesthetic qualities of Benning's work have both inspired and been inspired by the visual conventions of other great slow cinema directors, like Chantal Akerman, Bellatar,
Mi az? Maguk még nem látta a ködöt?
and Abbas Kiarostami.
درستی میکنم میری میبینی اشتباه از طرف در آمده اشتباه.
But while the number of shots was no longer a problem, the nature of them still was. Even in these countless hours of Benning's films, the pool of shots that even slightly resemble Michael Bay's work remains small, especially when looking at some very literally titled films, like 10 Skies or 13 Lakes. But while so much of Benning's filmography is comprised of these arresting tableaus of rural environments, he has, on occasion, turned his eye to the city, most prominently in 1977's 11x14 and 1982's Him and Me. It struck me that any hope of successfully creating a Benning by Bay style trailer would be found in these films, and if not, at least there's some camera movement. As I'm sure some of you have already figured out, this doesn't work. To chop up Benning's films like this completely negates the significance of their length. As much as I've tried to demonstrate just how long some of these shots can feel, a film trailer, and even a video essay, is too short a medium to effectively communicate this. But don't take my word for it.
Mais je veux pas dire que je ne crois pas à la passion parce que ce serait déjà un credo trop violent. Mais c'est vrai que quand j'ai vu le film fini, je me suis rendu compte que c'était un film qui ne croyait pas à la passion et ni au romantisme. Et de nouveau, quand on repart du plat, que c'est un film qui ne croit pas au sublime à aucun moment. Et ce que je disais, moi je suis du côté du discours de Charles Denner à la fin.
This interview with Chantal Akerman, I think, perfectly encapsulates why time spent with films like Alan's Worth
is time well spent.
Time well spent? That's what it's all about?
Yeah, I think so.
Michael Bay's films and other genre movies like them often get labelled as escapism. Their entertainment is a distraction, a chance to switch off from whatever's going on in your life. Slow cinema, however, is a reminder. As Ackerman describes, watching a film like Alan's Worth makes you become hyper-aware that you're watching a film. Hyper-aware that time is passing. Hyper-aware that we're all going to die. The sense of mortality calls for a reflection on how we spend what precious little time we have. And it's in this notion I realised that many of the thoughts that I've been having about Alan's Worth for the last year have actually been thoughts about my viewing habits. Thoughts about my tolerance for boredom. Thoughts about the how and the why of the doing the thing that I love. Ackerman might relish in the feeling that she's stolen 2 hours, but I'd argue that it's actually time given. Alan's Worth provides you the chance to reflect and to learn, not only about the suppressed history of its titular town, but also about yourself. And that is the easiest recommendation I can give.
Why you wanna fly, blackbird? You ain't ever gonna fly. Why you wanna fly, blackbird? You ain't ever gonna fly.